Recently, I've been trying to frame more and more things from family pictures, original photography, huge canvas art, old college basketball jerseys. And each time I'm over here scouring the internet from different brands, trying to get the dimensions exact, hoping the materials are quality. And that's where FrameBridge steps in and takes away all of the hassle. FrameBridge makes it easy and affordable to custom frame just about anything. You could design and preview your final piece online, schedule to ship your items or drop them off in person, and they're great for giving special gifts to friends and family. Visit framebridge.com or one of their local FrameBridge stores in Southport, West Loop, and River North to start framing. Hands up, this ad is gonna make you hungry. That's because it's Wing Week at Woody's Flat Hopsmith Tavern and Fatport Tap Works. You can get a pound of wings for $15.25 all week at any of the Big Onion spots. I'm talking Hopsmith and Gold Coast. All 3 Fatport locations in Wicker Park, McCormick Place, and Lincoln Wood. Woody's Flat in Old Town is even doing a wing eating contest where you can win $500 and free wings for a year. I just pulled up on them recently and left with 2 orders of the barbecue wings. They also got a Malort wing sauce if you into that kind of thing. Aftertaste lasts for an hour. You have been warned. Don't miss Wing Week at Woody's Flat, Hopsmith, and Fatport now through August 3rd. Today on CityCast Chicago, City Council is on summer break, so we're looking at a few pieces of legislation waiting on their return. Plus, we're talking council Nepo babies and Lolla weekend. It's Tuesday, July 29th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago is talking about. I'm here with executive producer Simone Alisea. Morning, my friend. How was your weekend?
It was good. I'm getting ready for a trip I'm taking.
You flying somewhere? Road trip?
Oh, road tripping. I'm road tripping to Indianapolis, which is closer than I think it is. I don't know why I thought Indianapolis was like 6 hours away. It's not. It's half that.
Yeah, shout out to Naptown. Taylor's parents actually go there quite a lot. It's one of their favorite places to travel.
Did you say Naptown? Is that what it's called?
Indianapolis, yeah. Naptown.
I didn't know that. I've never heard that.
The one thing I have recently become jealous of Indianapolis is their state museum has one of the very few 70 millimeter IMAX screens, and Chicago is still just going to be getting the basic versions. And so I haven't been to Indianapolis in quite some time, but I know their downtown has changed a lot over the last, I think I first went there maybe a decade ago. It's changed a lot in those 10 years, but I got a lot of friends who like going over there.
I'm excited. It'll be my first time.
City Council, as I said at the top of the show, is going into their August break, meaning they won't meet again until September. When they come back, most of their focus will be on budget season, but they do have a few ordinances that are kind of waiting in the wings, hoping to get a vote before all focus turns towards city budget. Simone, what are a couple of those ordinances that are maybe hoping to see the light of day?
Yeah, one I think that got some coverage in the past few weeks is this ordinance dealing with what are called accessory dwelling units, aka ADUs. You probably know them better as, they go by many names: granny flats, coach houses, mother-in-law apartments, backyard cottages. It's a wide variety. Essentially, currently, the city of Chicago mostly prohibits construction of these units.
Since about 1957. These have largely been outlawed. The concern at the time was mostly around, I think, city congestion and zoning.
Yeah. I mean, the idea is like if you own a house or even a building of some kind, if you own property, maybe you want to build like a small apartment in the backyard. Maybe you want to add an apartment on your garage. Maybe you want to convert a basement into an apartment. Over the past few mayoral terms, there has been a push to try to lessen those restrictions on building those units. Advocates say essentially that this is another avenue to provide housing, to increase the housing stock in Chicago. You're able to build some of these units and house more people, right? But they have come up against quite a lot of opposition, particularly in city council, because city council members over the years have sort of seen this as an encroachment into their zoning power in their wards. As we know, aldermanic prerogative. A lot of that has to do with sort of what can and can't be built in your ward. Alders have a lot of power over that. And the idea is if you sort of create a blanket legalization or a blanket easing of restrictions, all of a sudden that means people could be building units without actually having to get the alder's approval. The people who are most opposed would call it sort of like stealth upzoning, right? Like that you're able to kind of upzone your block without actually getting that approval.
One of those alders is Southwest Side Alder Marty Quinn in the 13th Ward, who we've talked about most recently when it came to like the proliferation of smoke shops. And if we gleaned anything from that conversation is he likes to know what is being built in his ward, what's coming in. And he says he does not like the idea of property owners being able to just kind of make these choices sans his office.
I think the idea is right that the alders know best kind of what the character and makeup are of their wards, and therefore they should kind of have a say in that. However, this piece of legislation that has been approved, it's gone through committee and been approved by a committee, is sort of the farthest that the council has ever come to easing these restrictions. You know, essentially, it would create a path for property owners to build these units. However, it was supposed to go before a full city council vote, but it kind of stalled. There was some maneuvering going on because there was still quite a lot of opposition to it. And, you know, there's sort of an amendment on the table that would essentially create kind of a middle step before getting approval to build one of these units. They call it an administrative adjustment. Essentially, you have to like go and ask permission to be like, hey, can I build this? You know, an additional layer of permission. That still stops short of what some alders wanted, which was essentially like, no, you have to like go through and get a zoning change, which like has to be voted on by the full council. Like a zoning change is a really big deal whenever, and business owners who have gone through this, right, often go through this when they're putting up businesses, residential developers on some level. If you're building a multifamily unit that is like bigger than what the area is zoned for, the zoning rules in Chicago are many and confusing, and so a lot of it requires you to say, hey, can we zone specifically for this thing that I'm building? And the proponents of ADUs are like, we don't need a zoning change. I don't need a zoning change to build an apartment on my garage of my property that I already own.
Some of the alders in support, taking from the data they've gotten over this pilot program period of the last 5 years, most of the approvals have happened on the north and the northwest side. And by creating an ordinance where you'd still have to get alder approval and you'd also have a limit on how many could be built in a neighborhood, some of the alders in support say that would actually end up kind of limiting the effectiveness of this. The goal is to like open up the housing stock by giving people the opportunity to build these, and also providing some city grant money to help property owners fund these improvements or these developments. And so I think the limitation in this middleman step may be a compromise that ultimately leaves this bill languishing, because I don't think either side feels really good about what they'd be giving up in that regard.
Although one element of it that is kind of interesting in this amendment is it would also allow alders, if they so choose, to just sort of give a blanket approval and just say, yeah, anybody in my ward can build one of these accessory dwelling units. Again, I don't know how many alders will do that, and if that then presents potentially even more inequities in how this unfolds. But I do think that's an interesting part of the amendment as well.
Another one was introduced by Alder Jeanette Taylor right before the city council let out for their summer break. And this centers around a senior bill of rights. Simone, what exactly is Alderwoman Taylor looking for?
This is a really interesting ordinance because it has a lot to do with housing, actually, and sort of specifically access to housing that is both affordable, but also just good, you know, that the things work and your landlord is responsive and things are working the way they do. This is an interesting one to be introduced kind of at this point in the cycle of the city council, because there are elements of it that are sort of it's a little unclear kind of what kind of teeth they would have beyond the mechanisms that already exist to protect, say, renters or even folks who are older. But one thing it seeks to do is reestablish a standalone department on aging, which had been folded in with the Department of Family and Support Services, and basically bring back this Department of Aging to oversee, among other things, housing and services for adults who are over the age of 55, creating, a hotline for people to report issues and, really kind of establishing an elder abuse and neglect program that would do education work. I imagine some level of enforcement, although again, it's a little unclear what that looks like. This is an ordinance that it's tough to be introduced at this point. We haven't seen it like up for a floor debate in any committee or anything. There hasn't been a ton of discussion on it. I suspect there's going to be quite a lot if Taylor is able to kind of bring this to the forefront come fall and kind of bring this up for attention. But I think it's one of the tougher ones. And I will be curious to see just how much traction and attention it can command by the time we get to budget season.
I do think the conversation is so vital and important. One thing I learned through some of the reporting around this bill is about 20% of Chicago's population is 60 or older. And that's about 517,000 people roughly. And that's an increase of 100,000 since 2020.
The population is only getting older. Chicago is an aging city.
And I do think a lot of even if we just think about our topics, whether we're talking about extreme heat, whether we're talking about affordable housing, whether we're talking about environmental justice, we're talking about access to fresh groceries, accessibility in terms of bike lanes and streets being paved or shoveled. All of these topics, our seniors, our elders are that much more vulnerable. And I think in so many of the conversations, but it feels like, at times that can be a silent part of the conversation. It's so assumed. And so the idea that city council is trying to come together to drive more attention to the plight and the challenges facing both the able-bodied and the disabled elders across Chicago, I think is really important. The last ordinance we wanted to talk about today, water safety. Whether you are swimming, whether you're on a boat, it looks like Alderwoman Stephanie Coleman has put forward an ordinance that may make it a requirement to wear safety equipment when getting in Lake Michigan on the river.
Yeah, this is really interesting to me because it's the ordinance is pretty simple. It would require anyone boarding a boat in Chicago to wear a life jacket. Right now on commercial vessels, so when you think of like the yachts and stuff, or even like the architecture boat tours, or think about those kinds of boats, right? You're not required. Right now they're exempted, but this ordinance would be kind of a blanket requirement, like in most parts of the lake where there is a lot of recreational activity. I think this, Coleman introduced this in the weeks following the drowning of a woman in Lake Michigan over Black Yacht Weekend. There were, I think this is something that comes up perennially in Chicago is water safety, and particularly with these like kind of recreational cruising that happens. I think enforcement is the biggest question. It is already really tough to enforce the laws that we do have on the water. They can only be enforced by like the Coast Guard and the police, for example. And so and it's really enforceable by ticket. That is sort of the way that works. And I think there are sort of questions too about like, okay, if you go on one of these cruises and you're not wearing a life jacket, is that I'm curious about sort of the fining structure of like, oh, are you personally fined for that? Or is that something that's like the organizer's fault for not instructing you to do that? I think the palatability of this and sort of feasibility of this just from a practical standpoint of like, are people really going to be okay with being forced to wear a big orange life jacket on their nice dresses when they're going on like a nighttime cruise of Navy Pier? Like, is that something that people really want?
When we first started talking about this, my first thought was like, oh, I already thought it was and then we started getting into the different types of boats. I'm like, oh yeah, I have never worn a life vest on an architecture tour, which I'm gonna be honest, has probably been one of the rockier boats that I've been on.
Well, and those boats are required to have life vests available
and that's
for
what I was
every
gonna say. I
single
was like,
passenger.
I know they have life vests. They sort of talked us through that process. But yeah, I guess I couldn't imagine sitting on an architecture boat wearing a life jacket. The ordinance doesn't specify what type of life jacket you'd have to wear. And some experts like David Salick, a sailing captain, said that could potentially be more dangerous for people who aren't used to sort of wearing a life vest at all times while on the vessel. And so it does seem like there are some more specifics they need to work out. The idea of maybe getting fined $500 for not having a life jacket on while on like one of those dinner cruises does seem a little...
Well, can you imagine eating dinner in your big life vest?
No.
Sitting at the table?
That seems pretty excessive, if I'm being honest.
It's tough because, like, the fact of the matter is I think there's, like, lots of evidence, right? That, like, if you're wearing a life vest...
Yes.
Yeah, if you're wearing a life vest, you, especially a good one, right? A high-quality one that is, and is, like, actually your size, like, you will probably be safer on the water. I come from a city that has like one of the largest ferry systems in the world, like, and you don't wear life jackets on those ferries, right? Like, it is not uncommon in sort of large commercial boating like that. Like, you don't wear life jackets when you're on a cruise, right? Out in the ocean. Like, it's not exactly like it's uncommon. This would be a pretty big step, assuming it's able to be enforced. But I do think, I think as a statement in sort of like, hey, the city council should be talking about water safety, I do think that's something that's worthwhile. And there are other elements that we've talked about previously, to what degree does the city have to be able to put out those like life preserver, things, kind of those posts out by the lake, and I think thinking about how does enforcement work of the laws we do have, I do think it's a worthwhile conversation. Again, how likely is it going to come up by the time September rolls around and the weather gets a little cooler? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I think that's tough.
I think all three of these, for me, probably an 0 for 3 in terms of likely to get passed.
The thing about ADUs, though, like ADUs could potentially come up because, as you mentioned, there are sort of elements of grant making that are part of that, which theoretically would be a budgeting question of like, how do we pay for this program? And we've seen that happen. We talk about sidewalk plowing or things like that, where programs that started as pilots that are looking for expansions end up coming up in the budget season because the city's budgeting for how they're going to pay for those programs. So the ADU thing, I think, is the most likely of the three to potentially come up again, especially also because you're talking about housing stock, which should, there might be taxing involved in that in terms of like, I don't know if there's like permit costs or whatever that then go to the city. You know what I mean? So like that one I could see potentially coming up again in the fall.
The Summertime Shot isn't complete without a little theater, if you asking me, maybe even a musical. And I've got one you definitely want to put on your radar. Parade is going to be at CIBC Theater August 5th through August 17th. Winner of the 2023 Tony Award for Best Revival of Musical, Parade is based on the true story of Leo Frank, the sensationalized media coverage of his trial, and the anti-Semitic tension surrounding a tragic conclusion. The New York Times said this revival recalls an era of big casts, big stories, and big talent, a time when musicals actually felt like events. And you know how much we love an event in Chicago, dressing up, making a night of it, so that makes Parade a perfect addition to your summertime lineup. Don't wait. Get your tickets now at BroadwayInChicago.com for Parade at the CIBC Theater August 5th through 17th. Look, I know the kids may not want to hear it, but it's almost back to school season, which can be very stressful on families. But one thing you can start checking off your list: preparing your student for Chicago Public Schools selective enrollment exam. It's coming up, and that's where Top Marks Prep is here to help. Top Marks Prep was built by a Chicago tutor who saw what students really need: a structured study plan, plenty of practice, and a way to track their progress. Top Marks starts with a free diagnostic test, then creates a personalized study plan based on what your student actually needs help with. There's video lessons, targeted practice questions, and unlimited full-length mock exams, all tailored to the CPS exam format. That October exam is coming up faster than you think, so don't wait to prepare. Sign up today at topmarksprep.com/citycast and receive 15% off. Again, that's topmarksprep.com/citycast. Another change that might be coming to City Council when they get back is a new alder for the 27th Ward. We talked a couple of weeks ago about how senior alder Walter Burnett was retiring and how he wants his son to replace him. Of course, that got us thinking about all the other times Chicago politicians kept power in the family. And Simone, of course, we got a quiz for that.
Yeah, this quiz comes to us from Hey Chicago newsletter editor Emmy Mack. It's a quiz all about, we called it City Council Nepo Babies, the quiz. Because as it turns out, this comes up a lot in Chicago. So we thought it'd be fun because Jacoby hasn't seen the quiz. So we're going to take it here live on the air. If you want to take it along with him, check the link in our show notes and we'll see how much you know.
I had a quiz in a minute.
This is one of our harder quizzes, I think. I think this is one of the hardest quizzes we've ever put out. I don't know if it's as hard as that food quiz I did last year, but it's pretty tough.
As long as I get more than 2, I feel good about it.
That's a good goal, I think. All right, here's question number 1. This mayoral clan needs no introduction. How many alders or former alders are Dailies?
First one coming to mind is Patrick Daley Thompson. I know the other 2 Dailies I'm thinking of were both mayors. I'm going to go with one, and he got ousted on some shady tax stuff, replaced by Alderwoman Nicole Lee.
There you go. You got it. And with the bonus on who replaced him. I didn't even give you the multiple choice, which we have.
Oh.
So Patrick Daley Thompson, as you said, was the alder of the 11th Ward until he was indicted and then eventually convicted of lying to bank regulators and falsifying tax returns. He is the nephew of Richard M. Daley and the grandson of Richard J. Daley, who, of course, are the father-son mayoral dynasty. Question number 2. Indicted former alderwoman Carrie Austin was just found unfit to stand in her corruption trial. Who did Austin originally replace to lead the 34th Ward? Do you want the multiple choice?
Husband.
Yes, her husband. Former Mayor Richard M. Daley appointed Carrie Austin to replace her late husband, Lemuel Austin, as alder of the 34th Ward. Carrie Austin served for over 29 years before stepping down in 2023, which was 2 years after she was first indicted over bribery accusations. Question number 3. This is an Emmy Mac special.
Mm-hmm.
The Lorinos controlled the 39th Ward for 54 years straight. Margaret Lorino took the job when her father, Anthony C. Lorino, resigned in 1994. You with me so far?
Yep.
True or false? The elder Lorino, Anthony Lorino, then went to prison over a ghost payrolling scandal.
True.
I'm sorry. The answer is false. See, what had happened
Scandal was real?
What had happened was Anthony Lorino died before the trial concluded, but his wife, his other daughter, Marie, and Marie's husband, John D'Amico, were all convicted.
Oh,
and
no.
then Marie's son, John C. D'Amico, eventually went on to become a state representative in the General Assembly. According to Emmy, in that area, because she's from the Northwest Side, born, raised, and according to Emmy, like those names are very well known, and I guess her mother also like hung out with Marie and again the person who became the alder, Margaret Lorino, and so it's a very tight knit group over there.
No, I like that question though. That was a spinner. It was like, yeah, he went to jail. It was like, no, he died. Everybody else went to jail. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
All right. Question number 4. Former Alderman Ed Burke inherited his city council seat from his father in 1969. More recently, he served 9 months for racketeering and bribery. The same year Burke was indicted, his wife, Ann Burke, ascended to what role?
Ooh, Chief Justice, Illinois Supreme Court.
Did not even need the multiple choice.
No.
Yes, Jacoby. Chief
No.
Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court. She served in that role from 2019 to 2022. Another fun fact, their son, Edward Burke Jr., also made headlines in 2019 for accepting a cushy job with Cook County amid an ongoing character investigation. Question 5. After 38 years, this is a really good one. After 38 years, Dick Mell's aldership of the 33rd Ward was passed to his daughter, Deb Mell. What other politician is the father-daughter duo related to?
This is a good one. But I do know Deb Mell had a sister, Patricia Pat. And Patricia's last name is Blagojevich.
Yes, yes. They're related to former Governor Rod Blagojevich by marriage. So you're thinking of Patty Blagojevich, who was born Patty Mell, which is interesting because Rod Blagojevich, people, of course, may remember famously went to prison for attempting
trying to sell Obama's former state Senate
seat. So it was really funny because when I was editing this quiz while Emmy was writing it, I was like, are there any city council Nepo babies, like as we call them, who were not directly connected to some kind of corruption trial? And she was like, not that I can tell.
No.
So we didn't talk about the more recent one. So Michael Scott in the 24th Ward, who left, and then his sister took over the seat. No corruption trials, no indictments in that one. So that would be the other one, I suppose, in more recently. But plenty of family ties abound in Illinois and Chicago politics. That's just how it goes.
This is one of the things I love about the podcast is that we can bring people this information from multiple angles in different ways, whether we are doing city council quizzes, going through the city council ordinance docket. And I'd like to think this is one of the reasons people should consider becoming a CityCast Chicago neighbor, showing their support to the podcast, because we do things a little bit differently around here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is such a good example of why supporting CityCast Chicago is worth your time, worth a little bit of your money. It's just that you kind of get this well-rounded view of city politics, but also just the city in general, talking about the things that actually matter. We're at the end of July. Of course, we're out on the water and thinking about water safety. How does our city look with new buildings? What is that? What's happening there? But being really honest about how politics actually works, in the sense that, yeah, we got a lot of family connections in our history, and kind of remembering how that goes. I know that stuff is really valuable to our listeners. And so basically what we're asking is, if you become a CityCast Chicago neighbor, you put up a little bit every month, $10 a month, to help make sure that we keep going, that we can keep bringing you these really fun conversations, that we can keep bringing you these quizzes in the newsletter, which I know you love because I see the numbers. I can see how many of you are taking them. I also know how many you get wrong. So sorry if you're trying to keep that secret. It's a great way to show your support and kind of keep us going for as long as you will let us. And you can do it by heading to membership.citycast.fm.
You're going to get the ad-free listening. You're going to get access to neighbors-only events, emails, and we want to hear your neighborhood shout-outs. Do you have a favorite cycling group? Do you have a favorite coffee shop? Do you have a favorite tamale man, right? Or a street vendor? What in your neighborhood do you want to put the rest of us on? And I think that's one of my favorite parts of this, not only this neighbors program, but this podcast. Something I hear from people in and around the city is to get a well-rounded view of Chicago, to feel like you know a little bit of something that is happening, not only in your own neighborhood, but a neighborhood on the opposite side of town, is extremely difficult. It takes work. It takes a little intentionality, some planning. And I think we help make that a little bit easier for people. I think we collapsed the city a little bit. Obviously, we could never do it literally. It's still going to take you potentially an hour to an hour and a half to get from one side to the other.
Especially during Lolla weekend.
Boy, but I do know from neighbors, listeners, and even just Chicagoans looking for a sense of connection that people do want to know what's happening on the opposite side of the city from them. They just need some help doing it, and we try to provide a little bit of that help every single day. And so come along, get these perks, but also help us do, I think, this very special and important work.
Seriously, CityCast Chicago neighbors are some of the most intentional Chicagoans I
100%.
have ever had the pleasure of meeting. And I love that for us. I love that we're building this community. If that sounds like you, head to membership.citycast.fm and become a neighbor today.
Remember that amazing little cafe you went to last summer? You know, the one with the perfect breakfast sandwich and them delicious smoothies? Or what about that hiking spot or that biking trail your friend told you about, but for some reason you can't remember the name? Well, with Overlook Maps, special places never get lost again, my friends. Create personal lists of places you've been and want to go. Hey, share your favorite hidden gems with friends and family. Let them discover that nail salon, that barbecue spot, that row of thrift shops that you've been trying to gatekeep. Or you know what, hey, if you want, keep your secret spots completely private. But what about this? Maybe you planning a trip with friends. You can create a share list where everyone can add their ideas. Maybe you visiting a new city. You can check out lists from locals who already know the best spots that you should pull up on. And here's a key part. No ads cluttering your list. No one selling your data to advertisers. Just your personal collection of amazing places organized exactly how you want them. Overlook Maps. Collect, organize, and share the places that matter to you. Download free at overlookmaps.com. And you want a little bonus? Go to overlookmaps.com/Chicago to see some of our lists and great spots on a map and in your pocket. Your places, your way. I wonder how many of our CityCast Chicago neighbors are going to Lollapalooza this weekend. G. I was out on a walk over the weekend, and I actually took some video of the crane lifting the sign onto the main entrance right there on, felt like that was like IW Wells.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, and it was funny enough, when I was walking past, they only had Lolla up. And I was like, stop, don't put the Palooza up, or Palooza. At Lolla. That's what it's just Lolla. We don't need the Palooza at this point. If you had to guess, like, let's say we like just flatten it to 100 neighbors, what percentage of that
what
do you
percentage
think
of them
are going to Lolla?
Maybe 5.
Just five people.
I don't know. I'm so cynical when it comes to Lollapalooza because I'm generally cynical about any event that is a big crowd, and Lolla is the biggest crowd in Chicago every summer. You're talking 400,000 people over the course of 4 days. Like, it is by far our largest music festival. It is probably the largest event of the summer. And of course, that makes me want to go, I don't want to have any part of that.
I'd say at least 13 people are going. What's interesting this year is FOMO is not a word that I think I've ever used on the podcast, but a part of me is feeling it because Summer Smash, I could only be there for less than an hour because of the extreme heat. Obviously, there was no Silver Room Block Party the last few years or Hyde Park Summer Fair. There was no Pitchfork, which over the last couple of years had become my favorite music festival to go to because, as Caroline Patton, our growth marketing director and the founder and creator of the Chicago SoCal, explained to us last week, like music festivals in general, even if the crowd is a little bit younger or it's hot outside, like dollar for dollar, they are obviously so much more expensive than they were just 5 or 10 years ago, but they still in some respects are a good bargain, only because the price of singing individual artists has also gone up exponentially. I just paid, I don't know, like $100 for Georgia Smith.
Yeah, if you can
tickets
find 3
next week.
if you can find 3 bands on the same day that you're
You know what
very
I'm
excited to
saying?
see at a music festival, like that is you've paid for your ticket. Like
Yeah, it's
you've really gotten a
like
good value.
the experience of a music festival is getting more and more difficult for me. I do like getting that in at least once during the summer, and my favorite festivals have just gone. And so I don't know. I'm looking at the Lolla lineup. Tyler, who I didn't get to see in person, solo, because I was like, man, them tickets is pretty expensive. T-Pain. I'd love to see
That's going to be a
T-Pain in
good
person
show.
right now. Claro, Doechii, the Marias. There's a lot of people on here who, again, if you've taken it 5 or 6 for the price of, I don't know what, like $200 versus one person for $100, that's still kind of a bargain to me.
All right. So this begs the question, Jacoby, if you had to offer one tip for our listeners, neighbors, our friends who are going to be at Lollapalooza this year, what would be your one tip for the people who are going?
I know it is the young people, part of the young people Lolla uniform, but I would invest in one of them backpack water bottles. I'm going to just say it. Like, if you're trying to just rely on plastic water bottles, that can be tough, even if they're all over the place. If they even allow you to bring in a reusable water bottle, you have to constantly be filling it or holding it. I don't know. After Summer Smash, I was like, if I ever go to an all-door outside thing during this type of heat, I will have one of those backpack water bottles moving forward. It's a must-have.
I think there are lots of elements of sort of the festival look, quote unquote, that some of which are impractical, some of which are very practical. So like the water bottle backpack, totally practical. Your tennis shoes with like good socks, very practical, right? Like you're going to be walking, and also you got to watch out for, it looks like we're going to get sun this weekend, but it's not uncommon for there to be mud at Lollapalooza, right?
Isaiah Rashad going to be there? Damn.
If you are not going to Lollapalooza, obviously you're going to want to watch that downtown traffic. I'm going to be out of town entirely, so that's my approach. But do you have any tips for Chicagoans just trying to navigate the city if they're not going?
Make sure you check the train schedules. They do try to run some extra red and blue into downtown, but you've seen those post Lolla pictures, and so.
Oh my God, those post Lolla Red Line subway pictures. Oh, my worst.
I know it's tough, but like walk about, I'd just say a mile away before you try to either get a train station or if you try to get an Uber. I would not go to the quickest Uber pickup drop off. I would not go to the closest stop.
Those are good tips. And yeah, just be prepared for the trains to be crowded too. I have definitely had this experience of being on the Brown Line, and it is filled with suburban children who are filling a plastic water bottle with vodka. And this is what it means to live in a city. This is just how it goes. Also, our producer Michelle Navarro offered a really good tip, which I think is excellent, which is also be aware that your favorite neighborhood venue might be hosting a Lolla after show, which means in addition to downtown being busy, your neighborhood may be a little busier than normal. You can find a list of the Lollapalooza after shows, but some of the big ones, obviously we've got big ones like Salt Shed and Talia Hall, but like Reggie's, for example, is going to be hosting some after shows. Shuba's, Lincoln Hall, Concord. Empty Bottle too, which I know a lot of people just like to hang out at Empty Bottle, right? So like, just kind of be aware that it's not just going to be downtown that is, all Lolla crazy. This will be seeping out into the city as a whole. And you know what? I love this for the people who love it. I love this for the music lovers, for the concert lovers. But I'm going to be in Indianapolis, so.
I just realized I'm going to be in Kansas City.
Oh, there you go.
For a family reunion. So luckily, I'll get out of here before it gets too wild. Before we get out of here, please join me in giving a huge, huge round of applause and thank you to our executive producer, Simone Alisea.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
Some good news. The Illinois Black Panther Party Heritage Trail is slowly taking shape, my friends. A soon-to-be collection of 12 plaques across the state honoring the legacy of the civil rights organization has started popping up, including on the near west side, right off Madison and Western. You can see it now. To learn more, where should you go? Say it with me. The show notes. Why did you just say Google AI overview? Like, that doesn't even make sense. I clearly was talking about the show notes. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.